I have heard of letting the world be and exercising forbearance. I have not heard of governing the world. Letting be is from the fear that men, when interfered with, will carry their nature beyond its normal condition. Exercising forbearance is from the fear that men, when not so dealt with, will alter the characteristics of their nature. When men do not carry their nature beyond its normal condition, nor alter its characteristics, the good government of the world is secured. Formerly, Yao's government of the world made men look joyful, but when they have this joy in their nature, there is a want of proper placidity. The government of the world by Che, on the contrary, made men look distressed, but when their nature shows the symptoms of distress, there is a want of proper contentment. The want of placidity and the want of contentment are contrary to nature, and where this obtains, it is impossible that any man or state should anywhere abide long. Are men exceedingly joyful? The yang or element of expansion is too much developed. Are they exceedingly irritated? The yin or opposite element is too much developed. When those elements thus predominate in men, it is as if the four seasons were not to come at their proper times, and the harmony of cold and heat were not to be maintained. Would there not result injury to the bodies of men? Men's joy and dissatisfaction are made to arise where they ought not to do so. Their movements are all uncertain. They lose the mastery of their thoughts. They stop short midway and do not finish what they have begun. In this state of things, the world begins to have lofty aims, jealous dislikes, ambitious courses, and fierce animosities. Then we have actions like those of the robber Shi, or of Zhuang or Shi Yu. If the whole world were to reward the good, it would not suffice, nor would it be possible to punish the bad. Thus the world, great as it is, not sufficing for rewards and punishments, from the time of the three dynasties, has been nothing but bustle and excitement, always occupied with rewards and punishments. What leisure have men had to rest in the instincts of the nature with which they are endowed? Delight in the power of vision leads to excess in the pursuit of ornamental colors. Delight in the power of hearing to excess in seeking the pleasures of sound. Delight in benevolence tends to disorder that virtue. Delight in righteousness sets the man in opposition to what is right in reason. Delight in the practice of ceremonies is helpful to artful forms. Delight in music leads to voluptuous airs. Delight in sageness is helpful to ingenious contrivances. Delight in knowledge contributes to fault finding. If all men were to rest in the instincts of their nature, to keep or to extinguish these eight delights might be a matter of indifference. But if they will not rest in those instincts, then those delights begin to be unevenly developed or violently suppressed, and the world is thrown into disorder. When men begin to long for them, how great is the deception practiced on the world! When a performance of them is over, they do not have done with them. They prepare themselves as with fasting to describe them. They seem to kneel reverentially when they bring them forward and go through them with the excitements of music and singing. Then what can be done to remedy the evil of them? Therefore, the superior man who feels himself constrained to engage in the administration of the world will find it his best way to do nothing. In that policy of doing nothing, he can rest in the instincts of the nature with which he is endowed. Hence, he who will administer the government of the world, honoring it as he honors his own person, may have it entrusted to him. Therefore, if the superior man will keep the faculties lodged in his five viscera unemployed, and not display powers of seeing and hearing while he is motionless as a representative of the dead, his dragon-like presence will be seen while he is profoundly silent. The thunder of his words will resound while his movements are unseen like those of a spirit. All heavenly influences will follow them, while he is thus unconcerned and does nothing. His genial influence will attract and gather all things round him. What leisure has he to do anything more for the government of the world? Sui Chu asked Laozi, saying, "If you do not govern the world, how can you make men's minds good?" The reply was, "Take care how you meddle with and disturb men's minds. The mind, if pushed about, gets depressed. If helped forward, it gets exalted. Now exalted, now depressed. Here it appears as a prisoner, and there as a wrathful fury. At one time it becomes pliable and soft, yielding to what is hard and strong. At another it is sharp as the sharpest corner, fit to carve or chisel, stone or jade. Now it is hot as a scorching fire, anon cold as ice. It is so swift that while one is bending down and lifting up his head, it shall twice have put forth a soothing hand beyond the four seas, resting. It is still as a deep abyss, moving. It is like one of the stars in the sky. In its resolute haughtiness, it refuses to be bound. Such is the mind of man. Anciently, Huang Di was the first to meddle with and disturb the mind of man with his benevolence and righteousness. After him, Yao and Shun wore their thighs bare and the hair off the calves of their legs in their labors to nourish the bodies of the people. They toiled painfully with all the powers in their five viscera at the practice of their benevolence and righteousness. They tasked their blood and breath to make out a code of laws, and after they were unsuccessful on this, Yao sent away Huan Tao to Zhuang Hill, the chiefs of the three Miao to Sanwei, and banished the minister of works to the dark capital. So unequal had they been to cope with the world. Then we are carried on to the kings of the three dynasties, when the world was in a state of great distraction. Of the lowest type of character, there were Che and Shi. Of a higher type, there were Song Shan and Shi Yu. At the same time, there arose the literati and the mohists. Hereupon, complacency in and hatred of one another produced mutual suspicions. The stupid and the wise imposed on one another. The good and the bad condemned one another. The boastful and the sincere interchanged their recriminations, and the world fell into decay. Views as to what was greatly virtuous did not agree, and natural endowments became as if shriveled by fire or carried away by a flood. All were eager for knowledge, and the people were exhausted with their searchings. On this the axe and the saw were brought into play. Guilt was determined as by the plumb line, and death inflicted. The hammer and gouge did their work. The world fell into great disorder and presented the appearance of a jagged mountain ridge. The crime to which all was due was the meddling with and disturbing men's minds. The effect was that men of ability and worth lay concealed at the foot of the crags of Mount Tai, and princes of 10,000 chariots were anxious and terrified in their ancestral temples. In the present age, those who have been put to death in various ways lie thick as if pillowed on each other. Those who are wearing the kang press on each other on the roads. Those who are suffering the bastinado can see each other all over the land. And now the literati and mohis begin to stand on tiptoe and with bare arms among the fettered and manacled crowd. Ah, extreme is their shamelessness and their failure to see the disgrace. Strange that we should be slow to recognize their sageness and wisdom in the bars of the Kang, and their benevolence and righteousness in the rivets of the fetters and handcuffs. How do we know that Sung and Shi are not the whizzing arrows of Che and Shi? Therefore it is said, abolish sageness and cast away knowledge, and the world will be brought to a state of great order. Huang Di had been on the throne for 19 years, and his ordinances were in operation all through the kingdom. When he heard that Huang Chengzi was living on the summit of Kongtong and went to see him, I have heard, he said, that you, sir, are well acquainted with the perfect Tao. I venture to ask you, what is the essential thing in it? I wish to take the subtlest influences of heaven and earth and assist with them the growth of the 5 cereals for the better nourishment of the people. I also wish to direct the operation of the yin and yang so as to secure the comfort of all living beings. How shall I proceed to accomplish those objects? Guang Shangzi replied, what you wish to ask about is the original substance of all things. What you wish to have the direction of is that substance as it was divided. According to your government of the world, the vapors of the clouds, before they were collected, would descend and rain. The herbs and trees would shed their leaves before they became yellow, and the light of the sun and moon would hasten to extinction. Your mind is that of a flatterer with his plausible words. It is not fit that I should tell you the perfect Tao. Huang Di withdrew, gave up his government of the kingdom, built himself a solitary apartment, spread in it a mat of the white Mao grass, dwelt in it unoccupied for 3 months, and then went again to seek an interview with the recluse. Guang Chongzi was lying down with his head to the south. Huang Di, with an air of deferential submission, went forward on his knees, twice bowed low with his face to the ground, and asked him, saying, I have heard that you, sir, are well acquainted with the perfect Tao. I venture to ask how I should rule my body in order that it may continue for a long time. Huang Shengzi hastily rose and said, a good question. Come, I will tell you the perfect Tao. His essence is surrounded with the deepest obscurity. His highest reach is in darkness and silence. There is nothing to be seen, nothing to be heard. When it holds the spirit in its arms in stillness, Then the bodily form of itself will become correct. You must be still. You must be pure, not subjecting your body to toil, not agitating your vital force. Then you may live for long. When your eyes see nothing, your ears hear nothing, and your mind knows nothing, your spirit will keep your body, and the body will live long. Watch over what is within you. Shut up the avenues that connect you with what is external. Much knowledge is pernicious. I will proceed with you to the summit of the grand brilliance, where we come to the source of the bright and expanding element. I will enter with you the gate of the deepest obscurity, where we come to the source of the dark and repressing element. There heaven and earth have their controllers. There the yin and yang have their repositories. Watch over and keep your body, and all things will of themselves give it vigor. Maintain the original unity of these elements and dwell in the harmony of them. In this way I have cultivated myself for 1200 years. My bodily form has undergone no decay. Wang Di twice bowed low with his head to the ground and said, in Shanzi, we have an example of what is called heaven. The other said, come, I will tell you, the perfect Tao is something inexhaustible, yet men all think it has an end. It is something unfathomable, yet men all think its extreme limit can be reached. He who attains to my Tao, if in a high position, will be one of the august ones, and in a low position will be a king. He who fails in attaining it, in his highest attainment, will see the light, but will descend and be on the earth. At present, all things are produced from the earth and return to the earth. Therefore, I will leave you and enter the gate of the unending to enjoy myself in the fields of the illimitable. I will bend my light with that of the sun and moon, and will endure while heaven and earth endure. If men agree with my views, I will be unconscious of it. If they keep far apart from them, I will be unconscious of it. They may all die, and I will abide alone. Yuan Chang, rambling to the east, having been borne along on a gentle breeze, suddenly encountered Hong Meng, who was rambling about, slapping his buttocks and hopping like a bird. Amazed at the sight, Yuan Chang stood reverentially and said to the other, venerable sir, who are you? Why are you doing this? Hong Meng went on slapping his buttocks and hopping like a bird, but replied, I'm enjoying myself. Yuan Chang said, I wish to ask you a question. Hong Meng lifted up his head, looked at the stranger, and said, Pooh! Yuan Chang, however, continued, the breath of heaven is out of harmony, the breath of earth is bound up. The 6 elemental influences do not act in concord. The 4 seasons do not observe their proper times. Now I wish to blend together the essential qualities of those 6 influences in order to nourish all living things. How shall I go about it? Hong Meng slapped his buttocks, hopped about, and shook his head, saying, I do not know, I do not know. Yun Xiang could not pursue his question, but 3 years afterward, when again rambling in the east, he was passing by the wild of Song. He happened to meet Hong Meng. Delighted, he hastened to him and said, have you forgotten me, O heaven? Have you forgotten me, O heaven? At the same time, he bowed twice with his head to the ground, wishing to receive his instructions. Hong Meng said, wandering listlessly about, I know not what I seek. Carried on by a wild impulse, I know not where I am going. I wander about in the strange manner which you have seen, and see that nothing proceeds without method and order. What more should I know? Yuan Chang replied, I also seem carried on by an aimless influence, and yet the people follow me wherever I go. I cannot help their doing so. But now, as they thus imitate me, I wish to hear a word from you in the case. The other said, what disturbs the regular method of heaven comes into collision with the nature of things, prevents the accomplishment of the mysterious operation of heaven, scatters herds of animals, makes birds all sing at night, is calamitous to vegetation, and disastrous to all insects. All this is owing, I conceive, to the error of governing men. What then, said Yun Chang, shall I do? Ah, said the other, you will only injure them. I will leave you in my dancing way and return to my place. Yun Chang rejoined, it has been a difficult thing to get this meeting with you, O heaven. I should like to hear from you a word more. Hong Meng said, ah, your mind needs to be nourished. Take the position of doing nothing, and things will of themselves become transformed. Neglect your body. Cast out from you your power of hearing and sight. Forget what you have in common with things. Cultivate a grand similarity with the chaos of the plastic ether. Unloose your mind. Set your spirit free. Be still as if you had no soul. Of all the multitude of things, every one returns to its root and does not know that it is doing so. They are all as in the state of chaos, and during all their existence they do not leave it. If they knew that they were returning to their root, they would be consciously leaving it. They do not ask its name. They do not seek to spy out their nature. Thus it is that things come to life of themselves. Yun Chang said, heaven, you have conferred on me the knowledge of your operation and revealed to me the mystery of it. All my life I have been seeking for it, and now I have obtained it. He then bowed twice, with his head to the ground, rose, took his leave, and walked away. The ordinary men of the world all rejoice in men's agreeing with themselves and dislike men's being different from themselves. This rejoicing and this dislike arise from their being bent on making themselves distinguished above all others. But have they, who have this object at heart, so risen out above all others, they depend on them to rest quietly in the position that they desire, and their knowledge is not equal to the multitude of the arts of all those others. When they wish to administer a state for its ruler, they proceed to employ all the methods that the kings of the three dynasties considered profitable without seeing the evils of such a course. This is to make the state depend on the peradventure of their luck. But how seldom is it that that peradventure does not issue in the ruin of the state? Not once in 10,000 instances will such men preserve a state. Not once will they succeed, and in more than 10,000 cases will they ruin it. Alas, that the rulers of states should not know the danger of employing such men. Now the possessors of territory possess the greatest of all things. Possessing the greatest of all things, that is, men, they should not try to deal with them as simply things. And it is he who is not a thing himself who is therefore able to deal with all things as they severally require. When a ruler clearly understands that he who should so deal with all things is not a thing himself, will he only rule the kingdom? He will go out and in throughout the universe at his pleasure. He will roam over the 9 regions, alone in going, alone in coming. Him we call the sole possessor of this ability, and the sole possessor of this ability is what is called the noblest of all. Teaching of this great man goes forth as the shadow from the substance, as the echo responds to the sound. When questioned, he responds, exhausting from his own stores all that is in the inquirer's mind, as if front to front with all under heaven. His resting place gives forth no sound. His sphere of activity has no restriction of place. He conducts every one to his proper goal, proceeding to it and bringing him back to it as by his own movement. His movements have no trace. His going forth and his re-enterings have no deviation. His course is like that of the sun, without beginning or ending. If you would praise or discourse about his personality, he is united with the great community of existences. He belongs to that great community and has no individual self. Having no individual self, how should he have anything that can be called his? If you look at those who have what they call their own, they are the superior men of former times. If you look at him who has nothing of the kind, he is the friend of heaven and earth. Mean, and yet demanding to be allowed their free course. Such are things. Low, and yet requiring to be relied on. Such are the people, hidden as to their issues, and yet requiring to be done. Such are affairs, course, and yet necessary to be set forth. Such are laws, remote, and yet necessary to have dwelling in oneself. Such is righteousness, near, and yet necessary to be widely extended. Such is benevolence, restrictive, and yet necessary to be multiplied. Such are ceremonies, lodged in the center, and yet requiring to be exalted. Such is virtue, always one, and yet requiring to be modified. Such is the Tao, spirit-like, and yet requiring to be exercised. Such is heaven. Therefore, the sages contemplated heaven, but did not assist it. They tried to perfect their virtue, but did not allow it to embarrass them. They proceeded according to the Tao, but did not lay any plans. They associated benevolence with all their doings, but did not rely on it. They pursued righteousness extensively, but did not try to accumulate it. They responded to ceremonies, but did not conceal their opinion as to the troublesomeness of them. They engaged in affairs as they occurred, and did not decline them. They strove to render their laws uniform, but feared that confusion might arise from them. They relied upon the people, and did not set light by them. They depended on things as their instruments and did not discard them. They did not think things equal to what they employed them for, but yet they did not see that they could do without employing them. Those who do not understand heaven are not pure in their virtue. Those who do not comprehend the Tao have no course that they can pursue successfully. Alas, for them who do not clearly understand the Tao, heaven is it that we call the Tao. There is the Tao, or way of heaven, and there is the Tao, or way of man. Doing nothing and yet attracting all honor is the way of heaven. Doing and being embarrassed thereby is the way of man. It is the way of heaven that plays the part of the Lord. It is the way of man that plays the part of the servant. The way of heaven and the way of man are far apart. They should be clearly distinguished from each other.